Do you believe that spending less than you earn is a way to build wealth? If so, this video is for you. Today, we're going to talk about 10 tips to stick to your budget. I'm Ian Group, aka Ian Builds Wealth. I'm all about making smart decisions today so that you can be rich tomorrow. We're going to discuss the roadmap today. That roadmap is called a budget. A budget is something that some people might fear, they might not like it, but I'm going to tell you today that it is simple, and I'm going to give you 10 simple tips for making your budget work. So we're going to start off with tip number 1, to plan and set a goal. 80% of people in the United States have a budget, yet 80% of people also have some form of consumer debt, and about 25% of people don't have any retirement savings. So you might be crafting a budget, but are you doing it correctly? The first thing you need to do is just craft a simple plan. And here's why. Most people will try to do way too much when they're budgeting. They'll try to bite off more than they can chew. But there are actually scientific studies that say our brains can't handle so many things at once. We're good at doing 2 things at once, but when you add a third, it gets screwed up. So tip number 1 is just to keep it simple. If your goal of budgeting is to reduce expenses, great. Let's focus on one thing. If your goal is to invest more, your goal is to pay off debt, focus on just those things. And if you've got a whole list of items and things you want to accomplish, just map them out. You're going to get it done one at a time in due time. Once you have your plan in place, it's time to put together a budget. And that leads us to step number 2. Create a zero-based budget. A zero-based budget is simple. You allocate all of the dollars of your income and give them a job. Financial guru Dave Ramsey said, a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. In a zero-based budget, we're telling our money exactly where it needs to go. Let me give you an example. If I come home with $1,000 a month, $500 of that goes towards rent, $250 towards food, $250 towards utilities. At the end of the month, I'm left with $0. That's how it works. Every dollar has a job. Make sure your money, all of it, has a job within your budget. When you're creating a budget, you might be tempted to use ideals. Let's say you currently spend $500 a month on food, but you really want to get it to $300. So you put $300 in your budget. Don't do that, because tip number 3 is to use realistic numbers in your budget. Using ideal numbers is a surefire way not to stick to your budget. Why? Because you're setting unrealistic goals. You need to start with the real numbers and work backwards from there. And this is where your plan is going to come into play, because if you're focused on one thing, maybe it's getting that food budget down a little bit. Start with the real number and focus on bringing it down a little bit. Tip number 4 is to track expenses. If you're new to this, there is no way around it. You need to see what's happening, where your money's going, and tracking expenses can also reveal problems. It can reveal different habits. It can reveal things that maybe you're spending money on and you don't even know about it, like an extra gym membership or subscription services that you just forgot about. It's true. I've seen it. Okay, so we've built the budget. We're tracking expenses. You're doing all of those things. Now let's take a pause for a second. In order for your budget to be sustainable, it has to convey value to you. You have to be receiving some sort of benefit. So the next 2 tips are incredibly important to your budget, because it might not be the specific ways in which you're going to stick to the budget, but I promise that when you see these things in your budget, it's going to make you more excited. So tip number 5 is to build in fun. You need to have a line item on your budget for things that provide a benefit to you. So whether that's some form of self-care, like going to get a massage once a month or working out with a personal trainer, maybe it's date night, maybe it's just going to the bar with some friends. All of that has a very welcome place in a budget, because it's going to make you happy. So add that in there. And tip number 6 is to build in investments. If you are going to put in all this work, all this hard work to budget, all this hard work to bring home money to support you and your family and whoever else you're supporting at home, you also need to support your future. And by investing, you're taking some of that money that you earn every month and you're going to put that money to work so that you have a material benefit, not just for today, but for years down the road. Because as we know, that money will grow. And one day, perhaps you plan to retire or work a little bit less. The effort that you put in right now into investing is going to help future you. And providing space in your budget for investing is going to help you in the long run. And while we're on the topic of investing, it reminds me of a quote from Warren Buffett, where he said, "Do not save what is left after spending. Spend what is left after saving." So for tip number 7, we're going to talk about automation, automating a lot of what goes into your budget. Now, a lot of people just get their paycheck and it goes right into checking. I do not think you should do this. There are a lot of ways for you to automate where your money flows. For example, if you have a 401k program at work, have that automatically get deducted from your paycheck so you don't even have to think about it. You also don't have to have all of your money flow into checking. Like I do with my paycheck, I actually have 20% of it go directly into a savings account. I've got 80% go into my checking where I have all my bills that get paid and I use auto pay for pretty much everything. And then from that 20% that I save, I have that go into different brokerage accounts and things to pretty much get invested, or some of it stays behind for my emergency fund. And that brings us to tip number 8, which I think might be controversial. Tip number 8 in terms of how to stick to your budget is to cut up your credit cards. So look, if you're new to budgeting and you're watching this video, maybe it's because you've been having some trouble sticking to a budget in the past. Americans owe almost $1 trillion of debt with over 500 million credit card accounts outstanding. It's really easy to spend on credit cards, and getting rid of them temporarily is a great way to hone it all in and make sure that you're actually able to stick to the plan and the goals that you set. If you get rid of your cards, you can use cash for spending. And if you really do need to use a card, I'd recommend just using one. This way it's very easy to track everything. And it's also very simple to just pay that one bill, which if you're using a credit card, pay it in full every month. Tip number 9 is super underrated. It is actually to delay purchases. Delay by 1 week. Here's why. When we are in the car dealership or wherever we are buying something new, it's exciting. There's a lot of adrenaline flowing, and a lot of the marketing and process around buying new things encourages you to buy. But if you take a step back and actually walk away from that thing for a week, it's really interesting what happens. In some cases, you might still want that thing, but in other cases, that allure might wear off and you've just saved yourself a massive expense. So in terms of sticking to your budget, if there's a big expense or something you've really been wanting, wait a week, wait 2 weeks, and then see where you're at. You might wind up saving yourself a lot of money. The last tip, which is my favorite, find a way to make more money. You're doing lots of hard work by budgeting and tracking expenses and doing all these things. Nearly 1/3 of Americans have a side hustle, and it's for a reason. Number 1, it is more accessible than ever today. You can monetize your hobbies, you can leverage an expertise on something, but it's never been easier to make more money. And instead of worrying about the small specific details of your budget, if you could bring in a couple extra bucks a month, I know it will substantially help you. It helped me, especially as I was trying to pay off a ton of debt. At the end of the day, you can budget all you want, but bringing in some extra money is really going to be a game changer and is going to provide a lot more wiggle room in your budget. I want to leave you with this. 10 years ago, I had 6 figures of debt. And it's really difficult to try to tackle all of that debt without having a plan. I promise, if you just keep it simple, follow these 10 tips, and just get started with the budget, it's going to help you tremendously. There is absolutely no one better to take control of your finances than you. And if I can do it, you can do it. So thanks so much for watching. I want to also let you know, I've got a free budget. It's in the show notes below. Go download it. It's the same budget that I use. So thanks for being here. I'll see you next week with another video. Let me know what you want to hear. Tell me in the comments. Go follow me on all the socials at Ian Builds Wealth. We'll see you again next week. Remember, the decisions that you make today to budget, to track your expenses, do all of these things, it's going to be the thing that makes you rich tomorrow. See ya.